For generations, millions came to California in search of opportunity, drawn by its natural wealth, mild climate, and booming economy. But today, California's identity as the nation's leading innovator and aspirational destination is under threat. Crippling regulations, sky-high taxes, rampant homelessness, rising crime, and failing public services have triggered a mass exodus of residents and businesses. How did the Golden State, once the symbol of the American dream, end up in such decline? Let's find out. One of the most serious problems plaguing California is that the state's population is in free fall, with both companies and residents packing up their bags and leaving. Between 2020 and 2024 alone, California experienced a net domestic migration loss of 1.46 million residents, the largest exodus of any U.S. state during that period. Unlike international migration, relocating within the U.S. is easy. There are no visa requirements or bureaucratic hurdles. In many cases, it's as simple as packing up and driving to a new state. Alongside millions of residents, major companies like Tesla, Oracle, and Chevron have relocated their headquarters from California to states such as Texas and Florida. A key factor behind this exodus is California's heavy regulatory environment and high taxes. California has some of the most generous labor laws in the country, including mandated overtime, family leave, and stringent workplace safety rules. Whilst intended to create a utopia for employees, it has in fact left them jobless, as companies simply pack up and move, instead of putting up with California's exorbitant labor cost. Environmental and consumer regulations have further driven up the cost of doing business. For example, major utility providers like PG&E and Southern California Edison have spent billions shifting to renewable energy sources. These costs are passed on to consumers, with California now having the second most expensive electricity prices in the US, behind only Hawaii. Why did utilities overspend on renewables? You guessed it, because the state forced them to do so. California's Renewable Portfolio Standard and the 2018 Clean Energy Act set ambitious targets for clean energy, mandating that an increasing share of electricity must come from renewable sources. While these policies have positioned California as a clean energy leader, they've come at a steep cost, one that many companies and residents are no longer willing to pay. Instead, they're voting with their feet and leaving the state. Fiscally, this trend is disastrous. California's loss of residents and businesses has sent the state's finances into shock. The majority of California's tax revenue comes from income tax, which is highly progressive. With rates reaching 13.3%, the highest in the US, nearly half of all state income tax revenue comes from the top 1% of earners. Additionally, California's corporate income tax rate is 8.84%, placing it among the highest in the country. Thus, California's state finances are fragile and dependent on a small segment of wealthy individuals and corporations who are now leaving the state at breakneck speeds. The exodus results in state revenue dropping, which has resulted in a growing debt burden for state and local governments, which has now exceeded $500 billion. This has triggered a downward spiral. As revenue falls, the state responds by raising taxes or increasing borrowing to cover the shortfall, which in turn drives even more people and businesses out. Another reason to pack up and leave California is the housing and subsequent homelessness crisis. California has the largest homeless population in the US, with almost 200,000 people homeless. Homelessness is highly visible, with sprawling encampments and thousands living on the streets. Roughly two-thirds of California's homeless population is unsheltered, living in cars, tents, or outdoors without access to formal shelters. Housing costs in California have long been among the highest in the country, and the chronic shortage of housing has reached crisis levels. But this is largely a self-inflicted problem, driven by policies that sound good on paper but fail in practice. California has failed to build enough housing to meet demand levels, and instead of removing barriers to affordable housing development, the state has implemented regulatory hurdles that actively discourage it. One of the biggest culprits is the California Environmental Quality Act, which mandates state and local agencies ensure development projects do not have a negative environmental impact. The Act allows anyone to challenge developments for virtually any reason, forcing even approved projects into lengthy legal battles which have raised the cost of construction. For instance, the Tejon Ranch development, a planned community of nearly 20,000 homes, has faced 2 decades of delays due to litigation, environmental reviews, and regulatory hurdles. The legal cost and investment risk of a project being held in court for decades has a simple outcome. Housing developers mostly stay away and instead focus on building homes in states with less regulatory hurdles. Tax policy has also made California's housing crisis worse. Proposition 13, passed in 1978, caps property tax increases and allows homeowners to pay taxes based on the original purchase price, not the current market value. As a result, long-time homeowners enjoy artificially low tax bills. A house bought in 1980 for $100,000 may still be taxed at that value, even if it's now worth tens of millions of dollars. This has various implications on the housing market. For instance, an elderly couple may stay in a large family home rather than downsizing to a smaller, newer apartment, since moving would trigger a much higher property tax bill. There is also a strong incentive to hold onto property, reducing housing turnover and locking an already low supply of homes. With limited property tax revenue, cities have little financial incentive to promote residential development. Instead, they prioritize commercial projects, such as malls and business parks, which generate more reliable income through sales taxes. This fiscal incentive structure, where cities favor commercial over residential development, has only intensified California's housing shortage. There are plenty of reasons for Californians to take their money and run. Violent crime and homicides are rising sharply, and store closures are spreading across the state as retailers struggle to keep employees safe and shelves stocked. Retail theft is up 14% in Los Angeles compared to 2022, and everyday items like toothpaste and mouthwash are now locked behind glass at Target and other major retailers. In Oakland, police are advising residents to install bars on their doors and windows amid a surge in burglaries and robberies, up 41% and 20% respectively in the past year. High taxes might be more tolerable if they came with exceptional public services, but in California, that's not the case. The state ranks 37th nationally in K-12 education, with student performance below the national average, and it ranks second worst for road quality. And these problems are likely to get worse. As more people and businesses leave, public finances come under greater strain, making it harder for the state to fund essential services. Can the Golden State turn things around, or is it headed for decline and dysfunction? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. I've been your host, Albert. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe. Until next time.